I was a bit late, but last week I was able to check out Venom 3 The Last Dance. So here's my ranking of all 5 SSU films. To be clear, I know that some of these movies are really bad. Hi, my name is Nathan, and I like to talk about a bunch of movies on this channel. If you're new here, down below in the comment section, share your ranking of the Venom movies as well as Morbius and Madam Web that are on this list, because this is just the universe that they've contrived out of Sony's Spider-Man universe without Spider-Man in it for some reason. Over on my channel, there's more rankings, more videos like this. Check those out once this video is over. And if you enjoyed this video, click a like button somewhere down here. And be sure to subscribe, because that really does help a lot. With all that said, let's just get straight into the ranking. In last place, Madam Web. Now, Madam Web has been the laughingstock movie of 2024. It came out about, as of the moment I'm filming this video, about 10, maybe 9 months ago, or something like that. And deservedly so. It is a movie that absolutely got clowned on before and after its release. And then everybody just forgot about it afterwards. Watching this film, it's kind of funny to see this movie in a theater, to know that this is what Sony is doing with their universe. It's pretty clear the actors don't want to be there on set doing this movie, and even promoting this film, they were clowning on it with everybody else.
You definitely did not see me in Madam Web.
The characters, as well as our villain, who I refer to as the one, the only, the almighty Ezekiel Sims, very uninteresting, very forgettable. Add to that, speaking of our villain in the movie, there's some bad ad-libbing where he's dubbing his lines, and they're dubbing it over really bad, and his mouth doesn't move with what's being heard on screen. And it only exists to set up the future Spider Team. The suits that are heavily promoted in the trailers and the posters for this movie of the Spider-Woman are only in this movie as visions of the future, and only appear for 20 to 30 seconds of the entire movie. Just baffling decisions like that. The plot is tied together by conveniences and characters, especially the teenagers, making unbelievably stupid decisions. What just pushes this one to the bottom, though, is that it is absolutely forgettable beyond all belief. I can't remember a single thing that happened in this movie plot-wise. I remember the basic idea of what happened, but I can't remember anything that happened in this movie, rendering it totally forgettable. Tied for last place, also, Morbius. Another big gigantic laughingstock that the Sony Spider-Man universe has barfed out into theaters, this one being a couple years ago. This one is possibly a bigger joke, as it's been one of the biggest jokes of the 2020s, of this decade, and rightfully so. When watching this movie, it's just an incohesive film. While Madam Web is more cohesive, this one is just off the rails, incohesive mess of a script. There's lazy writing for our villain, Milo Morbius, played by Matt Smith. He gets some ridiculous sequences where it goes from him dancing to absolute ridiculous lunacy, where he starts killing people for absolutely no reason other than we need to have a villain in our superhero film. And that's how lazy the writing is for this movie. Also at the beginning, an example of how the plot jumbles around is that at the beginning it starts off with Michael Morbius with a bunch of rats, cuts to a flashback of him as a kid, then goes to him winning some awards, and it took me a while to figure out that was after the opening sequence. So it's just, and the way it shows the passage of time absolutely does not work in this movie. And the characters, yet again, and the environment they're in are just bland and forgettable. The characters themselves. All that said, what edges this out above Madam Web, even though they are tied for last place, is that it's a little bit more so bad it's good than Madam Web. They're both really bad, but at least there's a little bit more to Morbius that I remember and that I find hilariously bad than there ever was with Madam Web. In third place, Venom. Now, here is where we start to get to some films that I don't think are absolute garbage, like Madam Web and Morbius. To be clear, there's a very big jump from Morbius to Venom, because I think Venom is an entirely watchable film. Obviously, the best thing about this entire franchise and this trilogy of films is Tom Hardy as Eddie Brock and Venom. He just does such a good job at bringing the life into these characters and their banter with each other. It's always fun to see. But I think of the three Venom movies, this is the one that has the weakest storytelling of the trilogy, where before Eddie and Venom interact for the first time, it takes a while for that to even pop up in the film, and you're just kind of following around Riot, who is a totally forgettable villain in this film. It also has the weakest action of the trilogy, where the final battle in it is in a dark environment with dark creatures to the point where you just get like blobs messing around with each other. There's a fake out sacrifice at the end of it where Venom dies at the end, and Eddie also dies at the end, and it doesn't work at all. There's absolutely no emotion in it. And so, this is an entirely watchable film. I can sit down, watch this movie, be entertained. It puts a grin on my face. But in the end, it's not a movie that on the overall actually works very well for me. Our runner-up is Venom, Let There Be Carnage. And you know your universe isn't doing very well when a movie like Venom 2 is second place on the list. Like, the Sony Spider-Man universe is a very strange universe where they make a series of films based off of Spider-Man villains and not put Spider-Man in them. That's just the weird way that this universe works. But I would say I have always had fun with Venom 2, while not necessarily considering it like a very good or great film by any means. It's just a good schlocky film that I enjoy putting on. I think it's a lot more fun than the original because it is only 90 minutes. It's self-contained. Eddie and Venom's dynamic is all throughout this film from beginning to end, making it a lot more fun than the original, where it just doesn't meander at the beginning. Carnage is definitely a standout here. Woody Harrelson delivers just an interesting performance as this psychotic serial killer. He's memorable. He is wasted, though. They kill him off at the end of this movie, frustratingly.
Fuck this guy!
And I kind of wish they hadn't done that, because I would have loved to see more of him in this universe, but they just kind of decided to kill him off, so, like, okay, that happened. The story is much more straightforward in this one, where it doesn't have a lot of moving parts, it doesn't have a lot of characters or even character arcs. It's just here to provide some fun scenarios with Eddie, Venom, and Carnage, and a bunch of these side characters also. Just kind of a throwaway B-movie. I don't think this is a great movie by any means. I don't even think this movie is very good as a whole. Like, if you're just in the mood for schlocky B-movie Marvel movie, I think that this is a good one to put on. And I enjoyed this movie, but not necessarily being great at the same time. But for me, in first place is the new one, Venom 3, The Last Dance. Now, I know a lot of you guys probably would say this is still a bad movie. I know a lot of you guys are probably not big fans of the Venom movies. As for me, with Venoms 1 and 2, I saw both of them in the theater. I saw the original Venom when I was like 8. And so, I have a good fun with these movies whenever I put them on, like I've previously mentioned. And watching this film in the theater, I would say it's my favorite of the 3 Venom films. Where, of course, the Eddie Venom banter is just as good, but I think it just had the strongest elements of the 3. So you get the Eddie Venom banter.
We are Venom! No. Oh! Yeah.
But you also get the strongest action sequences and the most standout action sequences of the franchise. It's going in all sorts of different locations, which makes for more interesting set pieces rather than just in San Francisco and like a church. It's the largest in scale, very clearly. And I think with the characters in this film, it has better setup and payoff, where they set up some lines in the previous two films, work better in this film, and even at the beginning of this film when they're hanging out with like a family, some of that still pays off in the third act. And because it is the final film in the trilogy, it can have some emotion to it. It is our farewell to the Venom character from this universe. And I think it has an emotional core that I think works for the most part. I felt something when you get to the end of this film, and it pays off quite well for the Venom character. Now, it is still a sloppy script where some of the inciting incidents of the final battle I'm not very a big fan of. Noel as a villain is just kind of like the other from the Avengers, where he's just kind of there in the background, doesn't appear all that much, and there is something interesting that could have been done there. Likewise, they do this thing in the third act where I think they underutilized it. The plot is still kind of messy, but in the end, which of these movies did I have the most enjoyment out of? And it is Venom 3. Because it had an emotional core and it had the best elements of what I liked about the Venom franchise. Even with having a sloppy script, I still think that this is the best of the Venom movies. And so, I think this is the best Sony Spider-Man universe film. Okay, there you have it. That's my ranking of the Sony Spider-Man universe films not starring Spider-Man. Down below in the comment section, share your ranking over on my channel. There's more rankings like this. Check those out right now. Thank you guys so much for sticking around again. I will see you in the next one.